Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of humanity's absolutely oldest, most profound mysteries. For as long as we've been around, we've looked up at the stars and wondered about the nature of our existence, right? Where do we come from and where are we going? Well, today, we are exploring exactly that through the fascinating, highly structured lens of Buddhist philosophy, pulled straight from our source texts. This isn't just about some abstract ancient ideas. It's a deeply logical framework that breaks down life, death, and the literal mechanics of what comes next. I am so excited to guide you through this, so let's jump right in.
Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly happens when we die? It's the ultimate existential question, isn't it? Our source material today actually provides an incredibly detailed, step-by-step breakdown of this exact process. But before we look at what really happens, according to this philosophy, we first need to clear the board of what absolutely doesn't happen. Part 1. Two Myths of Death. So, historically, humanity has kind of fallen into two totally extreme and honestly pretty flawed viewpoints when trying to understand mortality. Over on the left, we've got annihilationism. This is the belief that death is just the final, absolute end. The body turns to ash, the soul scatters to the wind, and everything just completely shuts off. But the text asks a great question here. If we just stumble into the world for no reason, live completely blindly, and then turn to absolutely nothing, what's the point? What is the meaning or value of life? Then, on the right side, we have eternalism. This is the idea that you return in the exact same state. The source material gives this really vivid example. Imagine a criminal on death row declaring, "I'll be a hero again in 20 years." According to the text, both of these views are just myths. Neither one gives any true meaning or responsibility to our current lives, and neither actually explains the reality of our existence. Moving on to Part 2, the human composition. Now, what's really interesting here is how Buddhism actually breaks down the physical human body to help us understand reality. Our physical shell is made up of what are known as the four elements, and you have to look at how perfectly these ancient concepts map to our modern biology. Earth represents our solid matter. Bones, muscles, tissue. Water is obviously our blood and bodily fluids. Fire is our internal body temperature, and wind represents our breath and our respiratory system. Literally every single physical part of you is just a combination of these four elemental components.
But here is where the philosophy gets super profound. The text teaches that the four elements are empty. Now hold on. Empty doesn't mean you don't exist, it just means your physical body is empty of a permanent self. You are a temporary condition. It's like a giant puzzle coming together for a bit. The source beautifully notes that sickness is simply a disharmony of these elements. So when your fire is out of whack, you get a fever. And death? Well, death is just the exact moment these four elements finally disperse. The physical shell just breaks down.
Part 3. The Eighth Consciousness. So if the physical body just breaks down and scatters, what actually survives? This is where we get into the spiritual mechanics. Enter the Alaya Vijnana, or the Eighth Consciousness. Think of this as your ultimate, indestructible cosmic hard drive. The text actually translates this as the storehouse consciousness. It's the absolute core of your being. While your physical brain and nervous system act a lot like a computer's hardware, the Alaya Vijnana is the master operating system. In fact, the source argues that our brain and nervous system only function because they're being actively commanded by this eighth consciousness. The second it leaves, the hardware just completely stops working.
To really grasp this, we need to look at what's actually sitting inside that storehouse. Your karma acts as seeds stored incredibly deep within the Alaya Vijnana. Every single action, every thought, every word you speak, they aren't just forgotten in the past. No way. They're actively recorded as karmic seeds. These seeds just sit securely in your storage drive, waiting for the exact right external conditions to pop up, just like a plant waiting for water and sunlight, and then they suddenly sprout right into your physical reality.
All right, so how does this actually play out at the end of life? Let's walk chronologically through this step-by-step timeline based on the text. At 0 hours, you have clinical death. The heart stops, the breath totally ceases. But the text warns that the eighth consciousness doesn't leave immediately. It takes roughly 8 to 16 hours for this consciousness to fully pack up and depart the physical body. Once it finally does leave, the individual enters an intermediate state, which is sometimes called the bardo, or the middle body, and this can last up to 49 days, sometimes even longer. Finally, when those karmic conditions are absolutely right, that consciousness combines with new elements for rebirth in a future time.
Because of this extremely precise timeline, the source text actually gives a very specific, real-world instruction. Do not move the body, and do not cry directly over it for 8 to 16 hours after clinical death. Why? Because the Alaya Vijnana, that highly sensitive storehouse of consciousness, is still in the process of departing the physical form. It's such a fascinating rule, right? It takes these massive, deep, mystical concepts and anchors them into highly tangible, practical instructions for the living.
Let's move to part 4, the law of karma, and see how this builds. We have seen the mechanics of death, but what cosmic rules dictate where that consciousness actually goes next? What decides the next life? Well, the text quotes an incredibly powerful Buddhist poem to explain this. I want to read this with deliberate pacing because the simplicity of it is just profound. To know past causes, look at present life. To know future effects, look at present actions. I absolutely love this because it distills cause and effect flawlessly. You don't need a mystic or a psychic to tell you your past. Your current circumstances are literally the direct harvest of the seeds you planted before. And your future? It's entirely dependent on what you are doing right now.
The source material actually breaks this karmic payback down into 2 distinct categories. First up, we have direct retribution. This is basically the hardware you receive in your next life, your physical appearance, your health, your lifespan, and your baseline fortune. It's the direct result of your past seeds. Second, we have dependent retribution. This is your environment. We're talking about the family you're born into, your society, your living conditions, and the text notes a really crucial rule here. Your dependent environment always follows the fortune of your direct physical being. Basically, if you have the direct fortune, your environment will naturally reflect that exact abundance.
Which brings up a highly relatable, everyday mystery. And I want to direct this question straight at you. Why can identical twins have completely different destinies and fortunes? Think about it for a second. They share the exact same DNA. They're born to the same parents, in the exact same house, at the exact same time. Yet one might be highly successful and happy, while the other struggles endlessly with bad luck. How is that logically possible if biology and environment are the only things that matter?
The source material flawlessly answers this by connecting it right back to our seed analogy. Twins share the exact same external conditions, the same soil, the same water, the same sunlight. But their stored karmic seeds, kept securely inside their totally unique 8th consciousness and gathered from their own past lives, are completely different. The external environment is literally just the condition, but the seed dictates what actually grows.
Part 5. Rewriting your destiny.
Now, if all this talk of past lives and karma sounds a bit heavy or fatalistic to you, hang on. We are moving into some incredibly empowering personal application here. So the crucial point is this. Buddhism absolutely does not teach fate. It doesn't teach that your life is just orchestrated by some higher power making decisions for you. And it definitely doesn't say you should just passively accept a miserable situation. It teaches dynamic cause and effect. It tells us that life is absolutely not fixed. As long as you have agency, you have the power to change the conditions.
And this brings us to the reality of agency, which is just so empowering. You plant your own causes. You receive your own effects. This means nobody else is controlling your destiny. That bad luck you feel like you have, according to the text, that's just a set of completely changeable conditions. Because of this dynamic system, every single thought, every word, and every action is actively shifting your future. Understanding karma is not at all about living in fear or guilt. It's about taking ultimate, liberating responsibility for your own life.
The text ends on such a beautifully reflective and inspiring note. It reminds us that a single good word or just a momentary act of charity today literally plants the exact seeds needed for future liberation and joy. It emphasizes that studying cause and effect isn't just about preparing for the afterlife, it's about learning how to live well today. By being mindful, you are actively rewriting tomorrow's destiny with what you are thinking and doing in this exact moment.
Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. What future are you planting with your thoughts today? Remember, every single day is an opportunity to plant a brand new, beautiful seed. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into such a fascinating text. Take a moment to reflect on your own seeds, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.